All right, let's see. Oh, come on. I heard a delivery truck. Oh, whatever. Oh, hey. Let's take a look and see what we got here. I'm not even expecting anything. Hello, I'm Robert, and you're welcome here in my busy little shop. On today's episode of What's on My Workbench, I've got a package to open up here, one I wasn't expecting. The sender says it's one of my most regular viewers and commenters on the channel. Nope, not the HR department. We're going to open up and see what we've got in here. Let's see what we got. Well, looky there. Now that's a heavy-duty shirt. A person could like that. It's a little bit chilly in the shop this morning. Oh, there's two of them. Another one here. Ha, that is a nice heavy-duty shirt. Let's see what it looks like here. I've seen this work before. Nope. Try it again. Huh. One last time. Abracadabra. Hey, it worked that time. You just got to say the right words. Hey, look to me for fashion in the leather shop. I think we've got it covered today. And yeah, I put that over the other shirt because it's chilly in the shop this morning. And I'm not going to talk about cold temperatures. Everybody across the U.S. has been talking about their cold temperatures. So I'm sure what I'm experiencing isn't there. But it's chilly in the shop this morning. It's about 50 degrees in here. Set this one here out of the way. I don't know if it works as well, but I bet it does. I'm sure you can hear the leaf blowers outside. It's kind of annoying, but I got to get something done today. I spent the last couple of days not getting much done. So I'm working on a pair of belts, father and son belts here. So I need to finish the final assembly and put the adjustment holes in. But I think they came out really nice. Two really pretty belts. So I just need to get the hardware installed on these. And then I've got a return of, I can't remember if this is the first tote I made because I made 3 of them out of the same material at the beginning. But the owner of this bag, also known as the HR department, I wasn't putting clips inside for like keys. And I've been doing that on all the bags since this original set. So this one's come back. I need to remove one of these copper rivets here and put a loop on the back here for a latch for keys. So, and this bag has been, it's been around the world. It's been a lot of places and it's worked really well. Most of the time it doesn't get kicked under this seat in front of her on the plane, but it will fit in there. So I'm going to modify this one here as well. Let's just set this out of the way for now. So you've seen me do this work before, so you know what I'm doing here. But I thought that while I was working here, I would answer a couple of questions that I have not answered that were from the live stream questions. When I finished the live stream, there were still a handful of questions that I did not get answered. So I thought I would take a little bit of time here while I'm working and answer those questions for you. So I had someone ask me in those list of questions about how I price my work. And I had a conversation with a viewer just a few days ago on the same topic of pricing the work. So I think what I'll do here is I'm going to talk about how to price your work from a business perspective, but I'm going to talk about, I'll also talk about how I price my work and why my pricing may not work for everyone else. Get this one here finished. So I think there's a few things you need to take into consideration when you price your work. there's a couple ways of looking at it. One is I see people talk about pricing their work, and there's a few elements that should go into it. One is the price of the materials. So you can figure out what your cost is for the materials to go into that leather item. And don't underestimate the cost. I guess what I'm going to say by that is if you have a side of leather and you're making, let's say, a belt, there's the belly area and the shoulder area, all those areas that it's really at times hard to get used up, especially if you primarily make belts. I've got a large stack of single shoulders and bellies that I have cut out that I may get used, or who knows, they may not get used. They work good for knife sheaths. Let me slow down my talking here. They work good for knife sheaths and holsters, smaller items, coasters, and such. But if you don't make very many of those items, then it's hard to recoup the or use those pieces of leather up on projects. So I guess what I would say is that if you're primarily making belts and you buy complete sides, and there are other ways to buy. You could buy a bend to where you have just basically belt material. But what I have found is most of the time the bend, the cost of the bend is about the same cost as buying the full side. And so I'll go ahead and I'll take the other items because like a single shoulder, I can cut leather out of that to make dog collars and other items. So, you know, I do use that from time to time, but it's not my primary thing. So what I was going to say is I would take that complete side and figure out how many belt strips you're able to get out of it, and then that gives you your cost for that belt. And I don't think I need to explain any further on that, but I would not figure out how much leather's left over and not include that in that cost. Now, if I make something out of those other items, I know going into it that my cost for that leather is already been absorbed. So you have the cost of the material. So that's the buckle, the Chicago screws, the dye, thread. You can figure all those things out and you end up with your cost of materials. So the next thing is, are you doing this as a business? If you're doing this as a business, you need to also include overhead. So you'll have your labor and your materials, and then you'll have overhead. And overhead is going to be the other things that, you know, the cost of the space that you're using, the cost of insurance, tax preparing, if you have to have someone help you prepare your taxes. All those things would be a cost of the, it would be in your overhead. And then you have your labor. Now, your labor cost, if you're just starting out and you're not efficient in what you're doing, you know, obviously your labor cost is going to be lower than it would be if you are proficient at what you're doing. I think you have to take that into consideration. So your labor cost when you first start off, it might be, I don't know, $15 an hour until you get to where you're efficient at what you're doing, and then maybe it's $20, $25, $30, $40 an hour, depending on how efficient you are at doing it. So in my opinion, like on the belts, my first belts, I would spend, you know, a complete day making a belt. If I work on 2 belts at one time so that I save like setup time from one station to the next, then I'm more efficient. So I'm able to easily finish 2 belts in a day. And like I said, I keep moving at it, and I spend a large part of my day from when I get up until dinner time in the shop. And part of the time I'm, you know, futzing around. Other times I'm working diligently because I've got a couple projects or a project that I need to get finished. So you take those items and add that together. Now there's one more element that you have to put in there. And I see a lot of people, they don't. They look at it as the material and the labor, and then what they want to call profit on top of that. And sometimes it's not much there. But if you're running a legitimate business, you have to consider, in my opinion, you have to consider the profit on top of those items. So you wouldn't necessarily add profit on top of your overhead, but you should add profit on top of the rest of the expenses, the labor and the materials. So, that may be, 20%, 30%. And I notice a lot of times, it's kind of hard to figure out. I guess the way I would look at it is it's hard to figure out what do you do for, if you're running let's say a small business, a hobby business, I call mine a hobby business. How do you handle requests from family members? Should you just make that and give that away? Or should you recoup the cost of materials? You have to kind of decide what you're doing there. And the reason why in the beginning I said the way I do it may not apply is because I'm running it as a hobby business. I don't use the business to put food on the table. If you're putting food on the table with your business, then I think you need to consider all of those items that I just mentioned. You may also in your overhead consider loss of materials. In other words, materials that have gone bad, dyes and clear finishes. You have to take all those things into consideration when you are pricing something. Otherwise, you may just end up just working for labor, which if you're going to work for labor, that's fine. You could probably get a business or a job at a business somewhere and work for labor. The whole thing about running a business is you're putting capital at risk when you run a business. Right now, I've got over 70 belts that are completely built and ready to sell. And can I sell all those belts this year? I would say not at my price. I may sell 70 belts this year, but I can't sell those 70 belts. And the point of that is eventually, when the music stops and I don't do this any longer, I will probably have a pretty good amount of inventory built that I have not sold. So, is that relevant? I guess it is to a point that if you can't sell it, then you'll never recoup your expenses out of it. So experimental items that you make may not get sold. So that cost of materials should really be in your overhead because that's a developmental cost of making, say, a satchel or a briefcase. That's a true cost of doing business. It's included in everything else. And if you're running a business with taxes and such, you need to take experimental cost into account as well. It's not just an item that you can't sell. It's an item that is in the developmental stages, and you can, that should be part of your operating cost. Let me concentrate here for just a moment and get these sizes right. And, so I think that helps answer that question of how do I price my materials. What I do on mine, because it's just, like I said, it's a hobby business. And I think you have to understand what is your goal when you run a business. And my goal of my hobby business is to have the hobby pay for itself. In other words, at the end of the day, it's a break-even proposition for me. That would be like if your hobby was playing golf, if you could find a way that at the end of the day that your hobby didn't cost anything. And the way I've ran it so far, I take the items that I price and sell, and that money I set aside, and I ended up buying another piece of equipment. I buy more supplies and such with that money. So I think that's enough on that. That's my theory on it. Not a business expert, but that's the way that that's the way I've run my hobby business. The next thing, I had someone ask me about dog collars. Do I make them as a 2-layer? What weight's leather? What things do I take into consideration on dog collars? And I've made a lot of dog collars. I've sold a few of dog collars. You're like, if you made a lot, I have a bunch in inventory. What I did was I took the cut off pieces of leather that I had collected over a pretty good period of time. I took some single shoulders that I had cut off of others, and I cut it into strips, and I made a collection of dog collars from those materials. So I felt like the leather side of it was, as I described earlier, leather I wasn't really going to probably sell, in projects, and I made something out of it. Now, I've had those on display, and I've sold very few of the ones I've made. What ends up happening is I take more orders. I've taken orders of dog collars as a result of them seeing those on hand. And I've had people say, I want one that matches my belt. I've had people, they want specific color threads, maybe it's school colors or such. But they go through that whole process of looking at those and then ordering another one. And I guess what I could do is I could price the pre-made ones at, I don't know, let's say the price is $25 and a custom one's going to be $50. I could do that, and that would maybe drive some people into, well, I guess I don't need the custom color, I'll just do that. But I need to sell the dog colors I have, in my opinion, to recoup the cost of the hardware, if nothing else. And I have, when I've made a dog collar for somebody, I have taken, there's that one there. This is the Woodsman. That's what I call that because that's like a double bit axe head there. I call it the Woodsman, and I think that one came out really, really nice. That's natural with tan coat, and it was oiled. And then this one here is the belt that I refer to as the Diamondback, and this is in the what I call dark mahogany, which is a mixture of dark brown and mahogany dye from Fibings. And I used black antiquing here just to highlight those diamonds a little bit on that dark background. But I think that's really beautiful. And this is the buckle that I get from Leatherwork Leather. It's a stainless steel buckle. I think that's really a beautiful belt. Let me set these out of the way, and I'll set up here, and I'll finish talking about dog collars, and I got a couple other things here. All right, let me cut my strap to hang that off of. And put a shape here on the end. So on the dog collars, so I made them 2 layers. They obviously don't need to be a 2-layer dog collar. You could make that out of varying thicknesses according to, I think, the size of the dog and such. But a 10-ounce strip, 1-inch wide dog collar, I think would work for, almost everybody. And I made, like I said, I made them out of cutoffs at the end of my my belts. So I keep any of them that are like 18 inches or longer. I collect those in a box so that I have pieces to make things like dog collars out of, or handles for bags and such. If they're shorter than 18 inches, I typically just toss them over by the splitter, and I use it when I'm testing to see if I have the splitter set the way I want it. And on those scraps that I cut off, I used the splitter and I cut those down to where they were, most of them are about 4 ounces. So when I put the two together, that's an 8-ounce dog collar, which I think is really plenty for just about anybody out there. That's quite a bit of leather. I have made some custom ones that were thicker, and I've made some small dog collars that I've made from, this is kind of a soft leather. I didn't really trim very nice. But I've made some even lighter than that out of like 2 layers of 3 ounce, so you end up with a 6 ounce collar. A small dog's probably not going to end up, damaging a 6 ounce dog collar. So when it comes to the weights of dog collars, I've got mixed feelings on the weights of dog collars. I've made some that are pretty stout, like 12 ounce collar. I've made some of those single layer. Most of the dog collars I've made is 2 layers, just using up the cutoffs that I had. This was one of the first bags I made. I ended up making 3 bags that looked almost identical, and I was making them for a sister-in-law that lives in Texas, and she was worried about it being heavy. So the first bag I made was out of some 2 to 3 ounce leather. Pretty sure I bought it from Springfield Leather out of Missouri, and I lined it with denim, and I sewed it together the exact same way. So it's denim on the inside, leather on the outside. Then I made this one here, 2 layers of the leather. So it's 2 layers of 2 to 3 ounce. Let me double check my overall thickness here and see what I ended up with. It should be somewhere around 6. It's 5 3/4 ounces of leather, and it's a finished leather, top grain surface on both sides. And so the reason why I made this one is I was just curious. After you make them, obviously mathematically it's going to be heavier, but how much heavier is leather than denim of similar thickness? Probably not much difference. Then lastly, I took and I made one more. These were all hand sewn. I made one more, and I made it out of 1 layer, and the inside of the leather I just finished with, I think it was tan coat, and I burnished it down, slicked it down with a glass slicker. When I had finished all of those, let me go ahead and get this apart here. When I finished all of those, I got to concentrate here. Try not to mess things up. I'm feeling to make sure that it feels like I'm getting between the leather. 2 layers of leather. I don't want to cut into the leather. I'm not sure it's doing that. I don't want to mess this thing up. Yeah, I've done that before, and I've had pretty good luck of getting it in there, but I've got this compressed so tight, I'm not sure that I'm getting between those layers. I don't want to cut into the leather there. There got to be an easier way. Someone tell me how they've removed those in the past. So now I've got my strap here. I don't have a copper colored clip here. I have a brass one. It's inside. I'll use the brass. And I'll go back with another post and burr. These came in a sorted bag, and I've used up the shorter ones, saving the longer ones because I figure I could always. All right, where's my burrs? I'll be right back. I was saying I used up all the shorter ones because I figured I could always cut off the longer ones. And it's worked out. I have very few of those left. Now, I've had some people ask why I put them on with the burr on the outside. I kind of like that industrial look. That's the reason why I do it that way. This is just a piece of some chrome tan leather that I had a similar color. And let's put this on here. The other thing you want to make sure you do is use the right size for the size of the post that you have. That's the smaller set. Dang, this thing's starting to get warm. Wrestling around with this bag. I'm going to have to take this off. Get this Pondo out. That will work against me setting this. Goodness gracious. I'm making a bigger job out of this than it needs to be. Okay, now that I have that selected, I'll just go over the edge of the corner of the table here. Make sure that I don't have anything between the post and the countertop. Let's drive that on there. I'm going to go easy because I can probably break this countertop out here on this corner. I had somebody ask me what I use, and it's man-made quartz. So I can break that. I need to hammer that down a little bit more. It's still got some like little sharp edges. Let me go back to the rounding tool here. I'm going to use a smaller one here. I could wail on it and get it done quicker, but I'm trying to be careful of this countertop. If I'm out here in the middle, I feel like it takes it pretty well, but here on the corner, there we go. I think that'll work. And now we have a clip on the inside here. That'll work. So I don't think it's too beat up there. The copper is a little bit different color. This has already started to oxidize some. It's got a really pretty patina. This will get there shortly. Let me return this to the HR department. I'll be right back. So actually, I went back and I repoed this again here because there's a question on here about how do I keep the steps in order on a project and not get things out of order. And I've got a couple of videos where I've done exactly that. There was a video of making a bag much like this one, and I had already sewn this edge together before I realized I didn't roll down the top on this. And so obviously, you know, you could work on doing that, but it's hard to do here. It's easier to do when it's on its own. So I ended up cutting that one apart. But how do I keep them in order? So on the belts, I've done enough of those and it's not as complicated, but on a bag like this, what I've done is I just took a card and I listed down the steps. So on the card, I've got the size of leather that I need for the bag, you know, all the measurements to cut out the notch here to do this folded part of the bag. And then I put in there the order, because I had multiple times where I put the handle on last, and you can put the handle on last, but you're wrestling around trying to, you know, set rivets and such with the bag complete. So it's much easier to put on the rolled edge, put the handle on. This one has a panel of leather that's between the two layers, but on the bags I make anymore, there's a separate piece of leather on the outside. I sewed that on, and I get all these things done. I make the bag or the pocket for the inside of the bag, and it gets sewn into here. And I've done that. I've sewn the top edge and then realized I didn't have this sewn in. So the step-by-step instructions, I think, are really important and would help. And the amount of time you waste on just one project would pay to keep that in order. So I just write out, I described it in one video as like a recipe card of the steps. Here's the leather I need, the ingredients, and here are the steps, and I place them in order so that I keep from making that mistake. I have to be disciplined. There's been a few times I wrote all that out and then, oh, it's over there, I know what it is, and then you know what happens. I get taught a lesson that it's better to go back and review that. So, you know, I think I'm gonna wrap up there. Answered a couple of questions here. If you've got any questions that you would like answered, I'll answer them in some future videos, or I'll answer them in the comments, but put your questions in the comments section. That really helps me, and I think it helps other people that are watching the video. They go through and see the comments, and I see people having conversation in the comments between each other, and I really encourage that. I think that you can learn a lot from that. I just finished putting out a video today on the NP4 leather skiver, my thoughts after operating that for a few hours, thoughts and concerns. I just want to get that out there in case anybody else is looking at buying one, so they know some of the ins and outs of operating that machine. I'm gonna wrap up there. Appreciate you spending time to be with me in the shop today. Please like, share, and subscribe, but more importantly, I do hope you have a great day.